I know it's going to sound weird, but the magic of movies wasn't introduced to me by Walt Disney or George Lucas or Steven Spielberg. For me, it was something much darker. Sure, I spent long afternoons and even longer nights watching Vincent Price and Christopher Lee and Peter Cushing in horror movies on TV. But I distinctly remember one summer when it all changed for me. It had to be the summer of 1984. My father had rigged our television with tin foil and a coat hanger in order for us to get showtime. I know stealing cable is illegal, but we were a family of meager means, and since my father passed away a year later, I feel this indiscretion is inadmissible for prosecution right now. Anyway, I distinctly remember playing war with my brother in the backyard and being called in because it was getting dark outside. After much belly aching, my brother and I sat down in front of our TV to see what was on Showtime that night. What was on would shape me for the rest of my life. What was on was Friday the 13th. It wasn't at that moment that I realized the magic, though. The next summer day, my brother and I continued to ooh and ah at the creepy goodness of the original, reenacting the lines and all the cool scenes. That night, when we were called in at dark, we sat in front of the television, and what happened? We witnessed Friday the 13th Part 2. Holy shit, what form of wizardry was this, we thought. Another night, and there's a second movie that continues from the first one? How cool is that? The next night, we saw Part 3, and the final fourth night was a Thursday. Looking at our magic window into hell, expecting another Friday the 13th film, what we saw instead was a preview for Friday the 13th Part 4, the final chapter. Yes, we were too young to be watching this. Yes, there was something wrong with my parents, resulting in me growing up to be the ghoul that I matured to be. But I'll be darned if my brother and I didn't convince my parents to take us to go see Friday the 13th Part 4, the final chapter, on the first night it was released that very Friday. A horror fan was born that week, all because of a piece of tinfoil, a coat hanger, and a curfew at dark. Since then, I've watched all of the Friday the 13th films, more times than I can count. I can name the kills in order in most of the first 7, at the very least. Above my bed as a teen, I had a pair of real machetes crossed in the shape of an X with a hockey mask of my own design in the middle, looking like a modern skull and crossbones. And though I haven't lived there in almost 20 years, that homemade homage to my favorite horror film series is still there in my childhood room. And my very next tattoo is going to be the same image of that hockey mask and crossed machetes as soon as I save up the cash. Yep, I'm a Friday the 13th fanatic. Happy birthday, Jason. And my niece Maeve, who happens to have a birthday on Friday the 13th this year. And a happy Friday the 13th to all. Welcome back to ML Miller Frights, a part of the Kings of Horror Network. I'm ML Miller. While you might be watching this video on the Kings of Horror Network, I urge you to click over to my ML Miller Frights page and give it a like, share with your buddies across the electronic superhighway, click subscribe to this channel, and don't forget to ring that bell for notifications. Please get the word out to new folks so we can make the Kings of Horror Network, as well as ML Miller Frights, bigger and better. Be on the lookout for a new Kickstarter campaign for an anthology I participated in called Nightmare Theater. This is a collection of short horror stories made by a whole gaggle of talented souls. The project is being helmed by David Schrader and Clay Adams. I paired up with my pirouette artist extraordinaire, Carlos Granda, for a morbidly fun morality tale to filmgoers who dare break the rules of common courtesy in the wrong theater. If you're interested in fun, scary, and gory horror, please support the Nightmare Theater Kickstarter campaign. Look below for the link. For the next 12 weeks, every Friday, I'm going to take on the arduous task of looking at all of the Friday the 13th films to celebrate the Shout Factory's monumental release of the Friday the 13th Collection Deluxe Edition box set. While I've reviewed these films before, my thoughts on them have evolved through the years. This is a brand new presentation of each of the films with all kinds of bells and whistles, and honestly, I don't mind returning to Crystal Lake now and again, simply because this is my favorite horror series of them all. Scoff all you want, movie snobs, I don't really care. Even the worst Friday the 13th has some redeeming qualities in my eyes. So let's begin with the one that started it all, 1980's Friday the 13th. It's directed by Sean S. Cunningham and written by Victor Miller and Ron Kurz. I think those who poo-poo the Friday the 13th films can acknowledge that the original is a well-made, gory thriller. At its heart, Friday the 13th is a whodunit, with the villain only seen from the waist down most of the time, making his or her way through the woods and killing counselors when they wander off alone. What started out as an open ripoff of Halloween somehow gained a life of its own with a unique script by Victor Miller, a score to die for by Henry Manfredini, phenomenal special effects by Tom Savini, and a small but charismatic cast. Sean S. Cunningham struck gold using the same tools Halloween used just 2 years prior. When I saw the original, I hadn't heard of Mario Bava's Bay of Blood, aka Twitch of the Death Nerve, which Friday the 13th and its first sequel borrow heavily from. All I knew was that there was something about this film that struck a chord in me that couldn't be beat. The film starts out quiet. A POV cam catches a pair of camp counselors leaving a sing-along and finding a quiet cabin to have sex. The counselors are disturbed by someone they recognize, and are brutally murdered. Yes, we've seen these first kills before, but this one sets the stage. It resonates and sets the standard while teeing up the mystery. Who is this killer? How did these unlucky camp counselors know this person? Why is the murder being committed? Unlike most mysteries, the clues aren't there in the opening moments for the audience to piece together. Instead, it's a secret buried by years of superstition and shame in a small rural town. Years later, a group of kids try to reopen the camp, including the innocent girl next door, Alice, played by Adrienne King, who has all of the final girl qualities: smart, resourceful, spunky, maybe a little naive, yet capable of great strength when necessary. And a few others, including Kevin Bacon in one of his first roles. They run into the local crazy man, Crazy Ralph, played by the amazingly creepy Walt Gorney, who warns them that Camp Crystal Lake is jinxed with a death curse, and the kids are later educated by a local sheriff of the camp's sordid history. Known as Camp Blood by the locals, much death and catastrophe have occurred along the seemingly serene waters of Crystal Lake. But will these kids listen to reason and leave? Of course not. This is a horror movie. And soon enough, the bodies start piling up until one lone girl is forced to go toe-to-toe with the killer. One thing I noticed this time around is how natural and funny this film is as we get to know the cast in the opening 45 minutes. There are some tropes being used, such as the prankster who acts dead only to really be alive for a shock scare, and the lovers who can't keep their hands off of one another. I also noticed that Alice, played by Adrienne King, is not the innocent virgin that came to be the calling card of the final girl. While we never see her have sex, she smokes pot and participates in strip monopoly. She has a relationship with Steve Christie, Peter Brower, who she obviously slept with the night before, as indicated through their conversation about her art. But she also is very flirtatious with Bill, played by Harry Crosby, son of Bing. And if you read the novelization of Friday the 13th, it indicates that the stuff Alice wants to take care of in California is another relationship she has with a college friend. She's not a doe-eyed noob. Alice got around, and if you're following the rigid cliches of horror that were established later in the series, she'd be dead meat along with the rest. I also really love the flirtation between Ned, the prankster played by Mark Nelson, and Brenda, Laurie Bertram. And while Kevin Bacon really doesn't dazzle here as Jack, Marcy, Janine Taylor, is absolutely lovable and charismatic in every scene she's in. Be she imitating Katharine Hepburn in the bathroom or talking about her disturbing dreams of rain and blood. Let's not forget the perky Annie, played by Robbie Morgan, who helps us all get caught up on the local lore as she makes her futile attempt to hitchhike to Camp Blood. All in all, this is a cast that really feels organic, and they look like people you might meet on the street rather than the underwear models the latter installments used. Without Henry Manfredini's iconic score, Friday the 13th would not be the classic that it is lauded as today. I'm not just talking about the ch-ch-ch sound, or more accurately, kill, 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 ma, 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 which has grown to be an entity all its own. I'm talking about the wonderful screeching violin crescendos, the twinkling water drop chimes, the symphonic crashes indicating frights and built tensions, I noticed this time around that the music only occurs when the killer is present, and the film avoids the piano bang or jump scares that the usual horror movie has, and is still afflicted with. Unlike today's films that think a fist on the synth board is all you need for a good scare, Manfredini made each second a melodic trip into the unknown, permeating even the lightest scares with a heavy dose of dread by the music's absence, then punctuating it with epic notes when things get dangerous. Look at any of the Friday the 13th after. The ones who use the original score are by far the scariest. Having recently watched some of the Friday the 13th fan films, the thing that those are lacking is the score, and without it, there's an inauthenticity to the camp blood mayhem. Sean Cunningham and Victor Miller deserve a lot of recognition for making this a successful film. Miller drafted a smart mystery thriller first. Who is this killer? Is it the camp owner set to rebuild? Crazy Ralph, the counselor who lingers a bit too long after slicing a snake to bits in the cabin? The sheriff? Maybe someone we haven't even met. That's the question everyone is asking up until the reveal, and even after the reveal, you may continue to question it. Could the boy who drowned in the lake be behind some of the killings? We never do see all the kills. It may be cliche now, but Cunningham fills his film with an assortment of friends and suspects, throws them in danger, and has a ball with it, making it a real mystery. Sure, the final girl role had made an appearance in many a film before it, but Cunningham brings everything together in the classic ending with an operatic level of slow-mo macabre mastery. The backstory, crafted by Miller, borrows from Psycho, Halloween, and from other slashers, but still manages to plumb some depths and enrich character by making this murder spree personal, and so distinct it was an origin that lasted decades. Adding the diabolical talents of FX wizard Tom Savini was the cherry on top here. He made each effect a showpiece. The artistry he used in this film have become cliched by today's standards, but each of these kills are a highlight reel for the master talent Savini possessed back then. A simple slit throat is commonplace in slashers, but here, with Savini's touch, you can actually feel the razor slice across the skin, and imagine how painful and shocking that might be. His work on the drowned boy, Jason, is iconic as well. Savini warps the young boy just enough to be monstrous and pitiful at the same time. The full body makeup crossed with the subtle acting of Ari Lehman under it all makes the final scene all the more frightening. There are a few other things that fascinate me about Friday the 13th. The first is Crazy Ralph. What a fantastic character. He's one I want to know more about. Why does he know what he knows? How has he survived all of these years knowing about the death curse? And how trendy is he that he can pull off wearing a fedora and a vest in the middle of summer? Steve Christie. Man, the Christie family is one of I wish they would have delved into in the latter installments. It sounds like the Christies have seen it all when it comes to trying to open the camp. I'd love to see a story from the Christies' perspective and what drove them to keep trying to open up the camp upon the cursed site. I also love to hear more about the fires and the polluted water, and if the death curse, hinted at in this, the first film of the series, has something to do with the way the murderous spirit of Jason seems to transfer from one person to another after his death. We're going to get more into that theory in future reviews of this series. I watched the unrated version of Friday the 13th for this review. I only noticed a few extended scenes, the most significant being the extended lovemaking scene between Jack and Marcy, where we get to see some boobage. A few seconds more on some of the key kills, Annie's and Jack's, plus a longer shot of an arrowed up Bill. And finally a scene during the final chase between Alice and Mrs. Voorhees, played by Betsy Palmer, where they make it into the cabin that seems to be armed for the apocalypse with all kinds of rifles and shotguns across the walls. But the bullets are locked up and unusable, unfortunately. The film, from the original negative, has never looked crisper and brighter and feels like a brand new movie. Special effects in this first disc of the Friday the 13th Collection Deluxe Edition box set include two audio commentaries, one by Cunningham, the other by Miller, most likely not taken in the same place given their frustrations with one another due to their court case, a reunion at a horror con, a piece on Cunningham, and one focusing on Henry Manfredini, Victor Miller, Robbie Morgan, Adrian King, and Betsy Palmer, plus the usual trailers, TV spots, and stills. Most of this was on the previous F-13 collection from Shout Factory. In the end, I think it was the fact that the killer is actually a victim, too, that makes Friday the 13th as effective as it is. The rage behind the killer's madness is somewhat understandable. Kids are assholes sometimes. And the way the film caught on and birthed so many sequels is equally understandable given that it plays into the rebelliousness of youth and offers them a boogeyman to fear, understand, and root for all at once. Unlike the films after it, which pretty much use the same formula over and over again, Friday the 13th, 1980 may not have been the first, but it definitely sets the stage for all slasher films to follow. That'll be it for today. Please chime in the comments and let me know what you think of this video, how on the nose or mind-numbingly wrong I am, or you can counter with your own review. If you like this video, please pound that thumbs up button. Share this video with your social media addicted pals. If you're looking for written reviews, you can find them on mlmillerwrites.com. Don't forget, I have 2 new horror comic book trade paperbacks you should look for. GRAVETRANCERS is out right now, and Pirouette, collecting never-before-published issues, will be out in November 18th in only the finest of comic book stores. And be sure to subscribe to this channel and ring that bell for alerts to be the first to see my future videos. Thank you so much for your time, and take care.
You're doomed to live the life you're meant to be, stuck inside your reality. You're doomed. Oh, you're doomed. You're doomed. God doomed. Live the life that you are meant to be. Live inside.